Well, I have a microphone, and you don't.
So you will listen to every damn word I have to say!
Welcome to the You, Me, and the Scene podcast, brought to you by Revival Recordings.
Hello, and welcome back to the You, Me, and the Scene podcast, brought to you by Revival Recordings. We are here on episode 7, and we are going to be talking about our favorite company, Ticketmaster. The one situation where labels, artists, music fans all agree on the same thing, that we don't like Ticketmaster.
Yep.
So we're going to go into, I think we're at a point in live music where is music even affordable to go watch? Sometimes it's not at this point. And the fees, the history of Ticketmaster, what got us to this situation, or like having it more known now in the media and being talked about among all bands and stuff. So, we're going to get into that. We're going to go all the way back a few decades to where this all began and where the issue started, because...
What was I going to say? We are down E again this episode. She'll be back next episode, we think.
Yes.
But I was saying earlier that I don't have a ton of experience purchasing from Ticketmaster outside of, like, the obvious My Chemical Romance tour and stuff like that. Not to say that I only go to local shows, but I go to a lot of local shows that don't deal with Ticketmaster. So I haven't personally been victimized by a Ticketmaster Live Nation that much, but I understand that other people
that you know of. Okay.
That I know of yet.
So obviously right now during this time it's become, more of a topic in the music scene due to, well, there's been a few instances lately. Obviously Taylor Swift, that whole situation for the Eras Tour blew it up, and the legal battles going on with that. But we know that this has been an ongoing issue. The furthest one back that we're going to talk about is back in the 90s with Pearl Jam, and it's kind of the same issues we're dealing with today that they were struggling with. So
yeah, I if we're mutuals on TikTok, I went on a private rant about how it kind of annoys me that Taylor Swift is being credited with taking down Ticketmaster when she is far from the first artist to call this out. Although it would be nice if she is the artist to take them down, because she is by far the biggest so far.
Yeah.
Basically, justice for Pearl Jam in this scenario.
Yes. Yeah, I will say it's a good thing that it happened to an artist like Taylor Swift, where she has the power to kind of fight back,
And the fan base and the army behind her.
Yeah. So it's kind of a plus, but like Amanda said, she's not the first, and justice for Pearl Jam, for sure.
Yeah. So
Amanda's going to get into the history of that.
So all of the information I got about Pearl Jam versus Ticketmaster is from this article on prospect.org called Ticketmaster's Dark History. Basically, this dude, Frederick Rosen, started working for the company in the 80s. This dude, Frederick Rosen, started brokering contracts between promoters and venues and Ticketmaster, and his advantage getting these contracts together, kind of undermining existing contracts with their competitors, mainly this company called Ticketron, was enticing these promoters and venues with cuts of service charges, which we are all still dealing with the effects of today.
Yes. So fuck that man.
Which I'm pretty sure later on in the article it says that he ended up being the CEO at one point. I'm not totally sure on that. I don't want to say that first outright because, God forbid I misquote something. But that's where all of the service charges and extra fees began. Basically, rich people bribing other rich people to keep rich people rich. And then... Go ahead.
And before Pearl, were you going to go into the monopoly of
Yep.
it all? Okay. Take it away.
Well, I wasn't going to go into the Well, yeah, you say a part about the monopoly so that it's not just on me the whole time.
Okay. Yeah. So after, the founding of Ticketmaster, Live Nation came around in 2009, 2010 era, and they, partnered and took over. And then 2015 came Frontgate, which is all the festival ticketing, which is also under Ticketmaster. So we just basically have one big monopoly. Ticketmaster is I don't even know if I can say the word Disney. The Disney of live music. So, I mean, that's in my head always what I compare it to, because there is no way around it. And the way that Ticketmaster works hand in hand with Live Nation, a little of what Amanda was saying with the contracts is, these contracts go between, there's contracts with artist managers, promoters, venues, certain cities. Their venues within the cities. If bands don't agree to the Ticketmaster terms, they can't even play in those venues. They can't work with those promoters. So it really is, there's no way around working with it. I think we as fans also see that when we're buying tickets. It's like, okay, we're just at the point where you have to put up with it and suck it up and buy it on Ticketmaster. But we need something else. That's not fair. So it's just... Yeah.
Ticketmaster's since this time period in the 80s, Ticketmaster's whole business model has just been swallowing their competitors, no matter what it is. But essentially, all of this was going on in the 80s into the early 90s, and Pearl Jam started coming up around... When did Pearl Jam's their first popular record came out?
91 is when 10 came out. Was that their first?
Yeah, that was their first, commercial... Yeah. So, basically... This article said early on in Pearl Jam's success, they didn't spend a lot on music videos or marketing or anything like that. They wanted to spend their time playing free shows or next to free shows for their fans to get people to hear their music. And Ticketmaster came along and wanted tens of thousands in fees for any ticket distributed to concert goers. It doesn't matter how much or how little the band was charging. They wanted like 25,000. They wanted like 25,000 or something like that to print the tickets. And this is even down to charity shows. Pearl Jam's, I think it said their manager or their booking agent or somebody got Ticketmaster to, I think it was to not enforce their 3% whatever service fee for charity events, and Ticketmaster originally agreed to it and then went back on it.
Yes. Which they did with like their fees in general with Pearl Jam, because they had made, I think, their contract, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda, if what you read, they were selling during that time, their tickets were $18. Imagine going to see Pearl Jam for $18 now. That would be great. And they wanted to only have the max of the service fee, like $1.60. And Ticketmaster's fees at that time was usually 3 to 4 times that. So there was that's where I think a little of it started, Amanda.
Yep.
That's where
the article basically says that not even just with Pearl Jam, Ticketmaster can charge whatever they want for service fees, basically, because they're promising all these people that are under contract with them all kinds of kickbacks and everything. So of course all of these people want to be making sure that they're getting theirs. Let me see. I'm a little iffy on my timeline of my notes here, but go ahead.
Yeah, so the servicing fee, because I did also look down the breakdown of fees. I don't know if we should fit that in right now, or if I should wait until the end.
Well, part of Ticketmaster,
the facility, the delivery, the service.
Right, we can get into that before we get into that directly. I do want to say, among the things that Ticketmaster screwed Pearl Jam on is they agreed to itemize their fees and tell them what this is all supposed to be for, and Ticketmaster also went back on that conveniently. It really seems like Ticketmaster tried to sabotage Pearl Jam at any opportunity they had moving forward, from conveniently disabling ticketing machines for an event whose promoter distributed Pearl Jam tickets to a local fan club in Detroit, to threatening blacklisting venues and promoters who worked with Pearl Jam at all because Pearl Jam made several attempts to allow fans access to shows without Ticketmaster's involvement. After all this went down, basically, a Department of Justice investigator caught wind of it and told Pearl Jam that they should file a formal complaint to prompt an antitrust inquiry.
During this, Pearl Jam then started publicly mentioning the contracts and what they actually agreed upon. And at this time, a lot of people would just, from what I read, would just, kind of look at the ticket price and not really have a problem with the servicing fees. And now this being brought up, and people are like, oh, well, what is that? Where does that really go? Because Pearl Jam's sitting there and being like, we don't know either. So it kind of was a turning point for, fans to be like, oh, yeah, I've just always looked at whether the price of the ticket was affordable. And then that's just added. So, and now, we always look at fees.
Right, and this is also, in the 90s, before we all know about everything that's happening all the time because of social media. So this was all going down. Yeah. This was back when, not that the curtains entirely pulled back on the music industry, but this was back when it really wasn't pulled back on the music industry. So Pearl Jam was really out there fighting way before all this Taylor Swift stuff happened.
Shout out to Pearl
justice
Jam.
for Pearl Jam.
Yes.
But all of this led to a hearing in 1994 where Pearl Jam testified in person, which was also apparently competing for press coverage with the O.J. Simpson trial, I guess. I don't know. I was born in 94, so I wasn't there. And then...
We didn't know what was going on.
After the, public legal battle, the hearing, I don't think anything came of it, really. It was just an investigation, correct?
Yeah, so it the outcome of it did not benefit Pearl Jam in any way. It somewhat benefited fans, making them more aware. And there was some deduction of service fees, I believe, because I know I read this thing that said basically fans benefited from this, but Pearl Jam got screwed over. So they, at the end of the day, like Amanda has already mentioned, they lost shows, they got blacklisted from things.
So the hearing was in 94. In 1995, Pearl Jam attempted a Ticketmaster free tour. They went out and specifically tried to find these independent venues and promoters and stuff who were too small to be working with Ticketmaster. And they got, I can't remember how much the article said. They got a few shows into it, and all of these shows seemed to have mysterious hiccups. One, Eddie Vedder got a mysterious stomach flu. One, they agreed to play a state fair where the local law enforcement had some kind of anti-moshing crowd control committee that made it so that their set couldn't go on. It's bullshit stuff like that. That was all just super sus. And the tour ended up getting canceled. And that's where my notes end, actually. After all of these shows got canned for mysterious, sketchy reasons, they just didn't continue with the tour, which, not that that's all she wrote, but it kind of seemed, at least according to the article, seemed like that was the end of Pearl Jam trying to stick it to Ticketmaster.
Yeah, pretty much at that time it was. I know a lot of people have brought up, since the Taylor Swift stuff, and have brought up again. I don't know if Pearl Jam has spoken out as of recently, being like, yeah, we told you, have brought up that again and kind of just been like, yeah, we've been doing it. But they themselves didn't really get much out of it.
The blacklisting and trying to keep other people from working with Pearl Jam and everything, they got so paranoid that it got to the point where they fired their drummer because their drummer had such a lackluster response to them trying to take down Ticketmaster or their feud with Ticketmaster. He basically said, "This is futile. Why are we doing this?" And they were like, "That's weird that you said that. You're out of the band."
Get,
A little
get
extreme.
I don't
Extreme.
a little
I don't think he-
tinfoil hat.
I don't think it was ever found that he was working with Ticketmaster, but that's how deep it got.
Right.
So,
Well,
crazy.
Maybe he was an industry plant. We don't know.
oh, don't even get me started.
That's for another podcast.
Y'all want to talk about industry
Yeah.
plants?
But so I think I know when I was younger, I would go to like FYE and get tickets and stuff. And that was, but we're kind of at the age where we didn't do that for long before we were getting them online. Not
I
like,
barely
that's where you
remember
got-
that at all.
Yeah, I was going to say that was like when I was like like a couple of my first concerts, like my dad would like go get them there or something. So it wasn't, or they used to have like the Ticketmaster like actual stores, right? Where you'd go and
I remember the
Wow.
kiosks at the local mall. But I think we moved to my hometown in like 99 and they were only there for like a year before they
Yeah.
got taken out. So
you had those, you had them being sold at like record stores, things like that.
Right.
That's where you would go get your tickets if you weren't going to the box office. And then everything moved online. And that's where service fees kicked in, because at that time, were there service fees during like this Pearl Jam thing? If they were going to the store and getting them, were they still getting that service fee? Yeah.
I think that was how it all, because people weren't buying tickets online in 1994.
Yeah, true.
So there must have been incurring I highly doubt that they were as extreme as they are today. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's times where I buy a ticket and the fee is the same cost of the ticket, the $30 ticket I'm buying, and then there's a $30 fee, and it's like, for what? I'm the one doing the work.
So during this hearing and all this stuff in the 90s, Aerosmith's manager spoke up and said that there's also, even back in the day, Ticketmaster fully had no way of preventing. It seemed like they purposely made their system easy to infiltrate for scalpers. And I think it said in the article that they played a show in LA somewhere. I'm not sure which venue it was, but they asked all the people in the front section of the arena, how did you get your tickets? And all of them got them from scalpers. So Ticketmaster doesn't give a shit about the resale.
So yeah, when Ticketmaster and Live Nation, merged and did that, it really did. They weren't just a primary ticket. I forget what year. I want to say it was like 2017 or something that they started allowing their tickets to then be resold on StubHub and anywhere else. Might be earlier than that. We'll have to fact check that. I just remember 2017 something happened. And so not only are they, 80% of the market for primary sales, they now have secondary ticketing under their belt. You're allowed to resell on Ticketmaster now, and that's what leads to those the pricing, what's the word?
Is it like tier pricing?
Yeah, like not but the I'll think of the word in a second. Hold on. The dynamic pricing. That's the word.
Dynamic pricing. Yeah.
Dynamic pricing, and so that leads to that because Ticketmaster's sitting there, and not only are they primary selling, they're secondary selling. So they're the ones who are buying them up and reselling them, and then the dynamic pricing is going up because the demand is going up. So it's like... So
we've established that Ticketmaster has been pulling this sketchy shit since the 90s.
Forever.
And I encourage everyone, this article, I spent like hours this morning dissecting this article. It goes so much deeper than what I even talked about. There's politicians involved. There's people there's a mob boss mentioned at one point. I encourage everyone to go read this article because it's equal parts. We'll link it, but it's equal parts.
In the bio.
Right. But it's equal parts infuriating and interesting. and it's very, very thorough. Doesn't have a satisfying ending because clearly here we are today. But I was hoping, I don't have all the details on the actual Taylor Swift case, so
Yes. I do.
I saw, and later, like, I watched, like, you know, the bits and pieces of the hearing online. I obviously didn't sit through the whole thing. Somebody mentioned merch cuts at one point, and I would like to point out, before we get into the Taylor Swift stuff, that Live Nation venues are not the only venues that take merch cuts. So get that idea out of your head before we even move forward. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
and that was definitely a discourse on, like, Twitter and stuff. And I remember you talking about that at that time, where it's like, it's not just a Live Nation thing, and that's a whole, I mean, that could be a whole other podcast episode.
Right, it's a whole separate, I saw even, I know State of the Scene is either currently talking about it or they just talked about it. I saw that they posted about it. We could talk about that another time. But Ticketmaster Live Nation is also very, very guilty of pulling the merch cut stuff on musicians. But if you want to get into the rest of it.
And, like, this episode, we're focusing, obviously, on just, like, the ticket pricing and the gouging itself. But, like, live music does have a lot of things that need to be fixed within, like, everything that's put into a show. And
it's infuriating. Like, at the top of this article, the dude that is cited as, you know, the person in control where Ticketmaster became what it's known as today was a tax attorney. Nothing to do with live music or musicians or art in any capacity. It's a suit that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, and I feel like there's, like, so much legally and, like, even government-wise, law-wise, that, like, we're not going to go into this episode or, like, know enough about to talk. But, I mean, to have monopolies in general, to allow them is just it's a problem. It's a bigger issue, so that we can't tackle. But
I know I'm not a Swiftie myself, but she had the reach and the power to bring everyone together.
For
that
this
all
cause. Came
to a head with this hearing, if you would like to get into what actually happened.
Yes. So, what I was saying with the episode with Liz, that we were fighting for our lives, I was not joking. So we had, I mean, it's not my first Taylor Swift tour. I've gone through other tours, like Reputation and stuff, where they did the verified fans. You'd go on and you could share music videos or do this, which a lot of other musicians also do to, like, boost yourself, like, in the ranking to then get a spot to buy a ticket. Reputation and Loverfest, I think, went reasonably well through Ticketmaster for, you know, having the verified fans, because she does want to stop scalpers. I know all artists do, but just having that power to be able to set up those things, because, you know.
So what exactly is the verified fan thing?
Verified fans is through Ticketmaster, so you have to go into your account and, like, verify yourself. But then Taylor Swift also had, like, a boost system, so you could share music videos, you could go save things on Spotify stuff for, like, it's like a point system just to, like, get higher up in the list, so that, like, the thought process is scalpers aren't going to go through and do, like, all of these things to get these tickets. It's like fans,
and it's like it's also like a prove you're not a bot thing.
Yeah, bots too. So going through that, so you kind of got like a number in line when you bought the ticket, and when it was your turn, your number, you went in instead of everybody on the system at one time. And Loverfest was the same deal. I mean, I was in the queue for, like, 4 hours, but that happens any large artist. It happens when I get tickets to Coachella and stuff. So, but you still had, like, your spot, kind of. And so you had a little bit of time to, you know, pick your seat. They're not all disappearing the second you get through. So obviously COVID happened and Loverfest was canceled, and this tour was huge. And I know she went through with Ticketmaster to make sure, like, you guys are prepared for what's about to happen and the amount that's going to be put on your system. So the verified fan thing happened again, but not the boost system. And then anybody who had purchased Loverfest tickets, if you're purchasing through Ticketmaster with like the same account, you were supposed to be boosted that way. Pretty much if you had Loverfest tickets, everybody's assumption was you were gonna get tickets and then everybody else would come after you.
And this is for the Eras Tour
Yes,
after
this is for the Eras
Loverfest
Tour.
got canceled.
Canceled, yes. So they were trying to prioritize those people that bought those tickets and got canceled on. That was not the case. I did not get tickets to start off. I did not get tickets through the Verified Fan. I did not get it through Boosted Loverfest. I had codes for Patriots season ticket holders where you can go in, anybody that has, like, a friend of mine couldn't get tickets through that.
Patriot season, what is
like,
that?
Yeah, like Patriots.
Is it
football.
like a... Oh, it's like a...
Yeah, so the show out here is at Gillette Stadium, so...
I thought... Sports?
Boston
What?
Patriots.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's at Gillette, because they're all stadium shows, so it's at Gillette Stadium. So I had, like, all these different avenues when option A failed, option B failed, option C failed. You would get on, and you would pick seats, and it was gone. Within 2 seconds, there was at no time where you were grabbing seats and getting seats. Even if you clicked them and went to the next page, up, gone, and then you'd go back and half the stadium would be gone, and you'd be like, just grab anything. So I've never experienced anything like it in all the time that I've bought tickets, and there are a lot of huge shows that I have been on the second the tickets go on sale and had to go through that. It was a disaster. So obviously you look online 2 seconds later and all the tickets that are, $50 are now thousands of dollars being resold. So, that was like the first issue that everybody's like, this shouldn't even be allowed to be resold for this. And I know I had that issue with the Olivia Rodrigo tour, that it was all general admission. She did smaller venues because that was her first album. They were $50 tickets and being resold for $2,000.
That was before the Eras Tour debacle,
Yeah,
right?
that was before. So those were all smaller venues, but I'm like, that shouldn't be allowed. Like, whether there's somebody out there that's going to pay for it or not, it shouldn't be a thing.
And didn't Ticketmaster, when this was all immediately after all this was happening, they were just like, we weren't ready. We weren't prepared for all this stuff, despite Taylor being like,
yes,
you're ready, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so that's the whole
thing. Ticketmaster came out, was like, our servers couldn't handle it. And this is all, like, pre-sale. They didn't even this is all pre-sale.
That's insane.
They didn't even do regular sale tickets. I don't know if they did them for any venues. They didn't do them for Gillette. They didn't do them for LA. Because this was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, all the pre-sale times. Oh, and I had like the City, no, it was Capital One. I have a Capital One card. I even tried pre-sale with that. So I had like 5 different avenues of pre-sale options to get these tickets and could not. And then the regular sale was supposed to go on sale on Friday that week, and they canceled. There was no regular sale. There were no tickets left. There were no options. That was it. So anybody that did not have a pre-sale option, you're done. That's it. Too bad. Try and spend, 3 months rent on a ticket. I don't know.
I remember when this first happened, and granted, I didn't look into it too much, but I just remember like the fans, like how they were reacting on Twitter or Facebook or wherever we were looking at. And I remember, without looking too much into it, I was like, we can't complain about not getting tickets. It's not,
because it seems so frivolous at first.
Right.
Yeah.
At first it seemed like, I was like, well, you guys are complaining about not getting tickets. She'll tour again, whatever. But then obviously when you hear about all these things and you see all the things that come out about it, you're like, oh, you're right. Ooh. I would never say that to anybody. Yeah, I would never say, Courtney, I would have never said to you, stop whining. But
yeah, no, I agree, because I always see it from that view that I was like, and I didn't get tickets that round, and I was like, that really sucks. Maybe like well, I was like, after that, I'm like, there's going to be plenty of giveaways. We'll try our hand at that. We'll try and see if day of tickets just like plummet and we'll just grab them and go. And a lot of people right now are doing that on this tour. I see a lot of people posting like, just grabbed tickets an hour ago and we're going, because at this point, like, that's what I would have been doing. But it was insane. I've never experienced in all my years of buying tickets and going to shows, experienced anything like it. Ticketmaster came out with their pathetic apology, and then Taylor Swift came out and made her statement and was like, yeah, your apology's not good enough. Like, you just screwed all these people over. And so she wasn't happy. She did make a statement. I mean, I'll post it in the corner of the video. And so I did end up getting tickets because they didn't do a general sale, and there were still seats available. And so they went back and corrected their issue of not giving Loverfest people tickets. And I got an email that said, because you had Loverfest tickets and you did not get tickets this time, we are giving you an opportunity. And you did not get to choose your seats. You did not get to do anything. You got to choose a price range. They were 3 different tiers of a price range, and they said, what price range would you like? And here are your tickets. And you could only get 2. And that was it. And so I got my tickets that way. But it's still like, okay, thank you for correcting your issue, but that should have been it. Like,
before we continue with the Taylor Swift stuff, just a side note, didn't something happen with The Cure recently?
Yes.
Where everyone got an email that's like a begrudging email from Ticketmaster where they're like, here's $5, thank Robert Smith, you fuck.
Yes.
Like,
yes. Yup. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of artists are having, like we said, it's not just Taylor Swift. They all have these issues.
And this
Ticketmaster doesn't need to apologize. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that this isn't even including fees and stuff. Like, the fees and stuff are a total separate issue, and this is just Ticketmaster just
being stupid.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this about, since, like, obviously, I'm like Amanda, where I don't really go to a lot of the big shows where I have to deal with Ticketmaster. Mostly, my Ticketmaster is dealing with, like, sporting events.
Yeah.
So I know that we're talking about Ticketmaster as this big, huge conglomerate and things like that. And because they're that way, they're really the only option for these big artists to use. Yeah. And so, like, even though, you know, Taylor Swift may hate Ticketmaster, there's really no other option that she's going to be able to do outside of this. So I think what we should, instead of like completely canceling out Ticketmaster or trying to overrun them with a different company, because we obviously see that hasn't worked in the past, that there needs to be some type of way to work with them.
Yeah. And
maybe that's changing of who's in charge and things like that. But like, they're at a point in a company's history where it's going to be real hard to overrun or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you, but I think we'd be hard pressed to find someone to run a conglomerate like this who's just not motivated by money and greed. Yeah. You know, like I said before, like, these people are suits. They have nothing to do with the actual music or art or shows or anything.
I don't know.
It's just another middleman in pockets.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they're, you know, with, to quote Spider-Man, great, whatever it's, I don't even know what I'm
great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
I thought that was Superman. Shit.
No, is it Superman? No, it's Spider-Man, right? I think Spider-Man's grandmother said it before she died. I don't know.
Okay, the two things I know the least about are superheroes and sports. You're throwing things at me that I don't understand.
Sorry, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched Spider-Man. Yes, his grandmother did die. But I think it's a difficult position because, yes, I think that a lot of times these companies do have these people that do make a lot of money, and they like to make their money, and there's reasons behind that. And then I think there can be a middle ground between finding somebody that maybe we trust more, and we as a consumer trust more, And I think it's going to be difficult. And I don't know the solution, unfortunately.
Right. Well, the other, like, I mean, I'm not nearly as optimistic about it. It's just, I'm more of a burn it down kind of person.
You're the glass half empty.
The
glass half
Ticketmaster.
Glass half empty. I'm going to break the glass over your head kind of
no.
person. But between the Pearl Jams and the Taylor Swifts, there's bands like Bad Omens, or what was that other band that testified during the Taylor Swift hearing? Before I misquote, but there's these artists who are like aren't quite the Taylor Swifts of the world, who also have no other option but working with Ticketmaster / Live Nation is included in this. And they have to play at these venues that are under contract with these big. It's just too big to. It is.
Yeah.
You know?
And unfortunately, there's people also that are working for like Ticketmaster and Live Nation that have nothing to do with it, and they're getting a brunt force of consumer hate.
It's like the social media person getting the brunt of the hate.
Yeah.
But the Ticketmaster stuff goes so deep into like being in cahoots with lobbyists and the government.
Yeah.
Like there's just the roots are so deep that there's no way it's not going to be corrupt, you know?
Yeah. Right. So I think that's like where it has to change. It's like Ticketmaster itself, like you said, like even Taylor Swift being, or any large artist, like Bruce Springsteen just had, I think, an issue with them and stuff. So all these huge artists, they don't have any other choice. Because when that Taylor Swift thing was happening, a lot of people were like, well, why don't you just not use that? And it's like, what's she gonna do? Create a whole ticketing system for herself?
Right.
Like,
I mean, she
could. She could. She could, but other artists can't.
That was when I got kind of annoyed on TikTok because people are talking about this as like a moral victory for Taylor Swift. Yeah. But my thing was, is it though if she didn't make any kind of statement until after the whole thing went down? Yeah. And, you know, justice for Pearl Jam, like, it's not like it's new, but I also understand that she doesn't have a lot of options. I'm in no way saying that. Yeah. I'm not saying she didn't do enough. I'm just saying I don't think she should be credited with the takedown of Ticketmaster. Is all.
Well, I don't think anybody is, because Ticketmaster's not taken down yet.
Right. I mean, there was just one hearing, right? That's not the end of it.
Yeah, it's still ongoing. But so it's like the whole thing is Ticketmaster's still going to stay a company, and monopolies don't care if what they're doing isn't good. Like if it's
they don't care about.
They're like, but we don't care. Like they don't have incentive to fix it.
Right. They don't care about the ethics of what they're doing or the morality of what they're doing, because again, it's just people who have nothing to do.
They're not competing against anyone else, so they don't have an incentive to be like, let's fix this and make it better. They're like, people are gonna deal with it. There you go.
So, just to steer the conversation back a little bit,
hold on. I just want to say, so the only thing to change this is laws and regulations that companies cannot do this and have to have max, but in our country, it's just not. Where capitalistic countries don't like that.
Oh, that's a whole other subject. I almost wore my shirt. My friend Roy loves this shirt. It says, my tummy hurts and I'm mad at the government. But if I wore it today, it'd be cut off and it would just say my tummy hurts.
I love it.
But just to drive the conversation back a little bit, we have your example of your experience buying Taylor Swift tickets. What did the actual what's the actual complaint say? Like
the complaint is deception, fraud, price fixing, because they were doing. I think they guaranteed Taylor that they weren't gonna do the price. What was the word I was just saying too again? The changing,
dynamic pricing.
Dynamic. I keep forgetting. And I think they told her they weren't going to do dynamic pricing, and they did, obviously, because tickets weren't that, like, the base that she made tickets for someone like Taylor Swift, there were ones on there that were like $70 base ticket. Nobody was getting tickets for $70. And that's because everybody went on the system at once, demand went up, and Ticketmaster just said, okay, well, we're going to skyrocket all the prices for the demand, because they can do that. So I think them telling artists that they have the choice to turn off dynamic pricing is a lie. Like, they have fronted and told artists that they have that choice, but then not done it. Price fixing, and then the antitrust violation. So they have a few, I think the deception and fraud go into, like, people like me that were basically told we were going to be guaranteed tickets and then got screwed. They fixed it. Hard.
Yeah.
Like,
it's going to be hard to, and, you know, I don't claim to know everything there is to know about law and things like that. And I can only say that my experience is watching crime documentaries. Or the
different
Johnny
kinda,
Depp
different
Amber,
time
or the
kind of
or
law,
the Johnny
but...
Depp Amber Heard defamation trial. But I think a lot of it's gonna depend on really the kind of, is it a jury trial or is it a judge?
I hope so.
I think it might be.
Well,
we
can get into the whole judge versus having a jury trial. But needless to say, I think it'll be interesting to see what they can charge them with, because like there's always loopholes, right? There's always things that you can say that like the correcting of the Loverfest thing.
Yeah.
Like, we did that. We tried to correct ourselves, you know. And so I wonder what I'm assuming are they suing them for an amount of money, or is it just more of a...
I think now there's a lot of politicians and things involved that they are lobbying for, like, actual law changes to these things.
Right.
Is where, and I think that's the only thing that's going to help and, like, change what we're dealing with right now. Because, I mean, it's not... The price gouging of these tickets, like, whether they're in demand or not, is insane. Even when I got my Blink-182 tickets, like, insane. And
yeah,
and
I mean, I will say that I understand why they have a service fee. Now, I don't necessarily know where the service fee and the price of the service fee is. I do understand why they have one, though, and I understand that you know, they're providing the service of tickets to people and for these things, and they're providing the service to the artists to sell these tickets. So I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any service fee associated, but it would make sense for us to have an understanding of exactly the service fee, or depending on the artist and how big the tour is, it should be like obviously if a smaller band is doing a tour and the service fee is, you know, $10, not that it is, but and then like Taylor Swift's is like $30. Like, it makes sense to be a little bit more because it's the higher demand, the more tickets, the bigger venues, blah, 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 blah. But, like, we just don't have an understanding of it ourselves.
Yeah, so, and especially with, like, those fees, because Ticketmaster claims that the fees, so there's the 3 fees you deal with. The facility fee, which they say is added by the venue.
Okay.
The delivery fee, obviously, can be waived. They usually have print from home tickets or on your phone. And the service fee, which is, they claim is added based on the agreement with each client and the order processing fee that Ticketmaster may, they put in quotes, earn a profit on. It's like, obviously you're earning a profit on it. Right. So with those fees, but sometimes when we're looking at those prices, I'm like, I can't imagine artists are sitting there, like, there are times where, like, the fee's like $70 added onto a ticket. And it's like, I don't see many artists being like, yeah, that's cool. I think those should be capped, because it's like, at the end of the day, you're processing regardless of the price of the ticket is the same like system. Like, you're not doing, Ticketmaster's not doing added work. And then the dynamic pricing was just created in 2022. And it was worded and presented as, to give artists a bigger share. But I don't think that's the outcome of it.
It's not.
But we don't know that.
Also,
do we know that?
But we do, because it's not. That was the whole.
I think that's.
I just was asking to make sure. I didn't know if there was concrete evidence that we knew. Okay.
So just to touch on some of the stuff that you said, back in the day, at least in the 90s, the way they got these contracts and stuff to go through were Ticketmaster was promising the people they were dealing with like 50 to 75 cents a ticket. And that's how they were justifying all these fees and stuff, is paying out all these other people, but then, at least the parts of the hearing that I saw, the band is actually called Lawrence. That's what I was Googling this whole time.
Okay.
Lawrence, this smaller band, was testifying against Ticketmaster about how they're not seeing any of this money that Ticketmaster is claiming to be taking on behalf of the artist. And it's to the point, like I mentioned before with merch cuts, where they're saying, we're not seeing any of this money. Not only that, but you're also taking a percentage of our merch sales. So what is that about? And that was the gist of their testification. Testimony, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Testification is not a word, but okay.
Yeah. And I know, so also with the pricing and they had a lawsuit in 2003. I forget who disclosed. It did not fully disclose UPS and order processing fees added to tickets sold online. So like all these deceptive things that they do consistently, not just this past year, not just in the 90s, throughout their entire existence of deceptive pricing. And I know other countries have had their own legal battles with them. I know Canada has done stuff like against Ticketmaster. It's just, artists aren't seeing the benefits of this. Fans aren't getting any benefit from this. Like, the only people making money and getting what they want is Ticketmaster at the end of the day.
And that's why I will give Taylor Swift credit, because, like, clearly, not that Taylor Swift doesn't need the money, that's not what I'm trying to say, but she has the money to pursue this if she chooses to, which gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah, and it's like, there are people that paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go to Taylor Swift on resale tickets. And not for nothing, Taylor Swift is a huge artist. This is a huge tour.
It's the biggest tour in the world, honestly.
She could have priced, like, the original pricing of these tickets, I honestly was like, that's crazy that, like, some of them were, like, $70, like, standard.
Well, it's probably, like, the nosebleeds.
Yeah, but, like, still, if you're thinking of, like, $70 to go see Taylor Swift, like, okay.
Right.
When you're, like, I thought that minimum was going to be, like, $150 at least, like, at that point. But, so these artists are sitting there and trying to make these tickets accessible and affordable, and we're just not getting that in return, like, when we go to buy them, which is ruining live music, to be honest. Like, there are people out there that will still pay for it, and that's always gonna be Ticketmaster's thing. Like, well, there's people that are still gonna buy the secondary tickets. There's people that are gonna still do this. So
the problem is live music is gonna, if this keeps going unchecked, live music is gonna be considered a luxury that only a certain percentage of people can afford.
Yes.
And that's not at all what the point is of any of this.
And I've been saying that a lot. Like, I've been saying that a lot lately, is, like, concerts aren't supposed to just be, like, a activity for the elite. Like, I shouldn't have to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars per concert I want to go see. And it's like, we go see, like, a lot of smaller bands of us and things like that. I'm not always going and seeing a Taylor Swift or Blink-182 level band. But even for those bands, you should not have to be paying that amount of money in any regard. And it's to me, I mean, I go to a significantly less amount of shows than I used to. I don't know if that's just for me getting older or like, but they're becoming like, it's just becoming that point where it's sad to see live music getting the repercussions of it, and like, where music has always been that place where it's like you're supposed to go to shows and like be part of a community and like enjoy that, but it's just not that. It's not being that anymore.
And I know we've been using Ticketmaster as like the main term for all of this, but I do want to stress that it's not only Ticketmaster. The part where, because like we've just said several times, like I'm not seeing Taylor Swift level bands or Blink-182 level bands, but I do see Live Nation level bands, and I do see, you know I've said I don't listen to Bad Omens that much, but watching bands that are getting closer and closer to the types of bands that I listen to being affected by conglomerates like Live Nation and Ticketmaster in a negative way, like it's hitting closer and closer to home, and it's just it makes me feel super negative about how the industry's going lately, Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of artists that are trying to figure out, like we said, it's really hard not to go through Ticketmaster. Because even if you're gonna go buy tickets at the box office again, Live Nation owns so many venues.
Yeah.
So many venues are directly owned by Live Nation that it doesn't matter. They're not just
Lawrence's... The band Lawrence's testimony in the hearing, they were saying,
the merch
like,
cuts,
but they said part about the merch cuts, but when Ticketmaster Live Nation becomes the venue, the promoter, the ticket selling, they're every part. That's what a monopoly is. Yeah. So, we're kind of talking in circles about it, but like that's why it's bad.
Yeah, and so like there's artists out there, like I know Maggie Rogers, I sent this to you guys the other day, kind of discussed, just going back to box office, and it's like you could, but like that's also sucks. Like not everybody has the time to go line up at a box office. Like
that not everyone has the time. Plus, like in the Pearl Jam situation, Ticketmaster tried to slam them with a printing fee. Like they're always going to try to find some way to knife their elbow in it somehow. Yeah, and then
I know, like so not for the tour that My Chemical Romance did, but that one-off show in LA before they announced the tour, before COVID hit, you weren't allowed to, like, you could not get a resale ticket for that. If your name was not on that ticket, you could not go in. So I also see a lot of artists that will be moving that way, where it's like, if you didn't buy it, too bad. Like,
I'm pretty sure I went to see My Chem with my friends Hunter, Chris, and Shayna, and we bought tickets to 2 shows pre-pandemic. And in buying tickets to the second show, I think Shayna bought one set of 4 tickets, and then they ended up being better than a set of 4 tickets that Hunter bought. So then Hunter had to sell the other 4 tickets that he bought, but wasn't allowed to sell them until like the day before. And then the pandemic happened and we didn't get to go for 2 years. And then for one of the shows, I was on tour myself anyway, so I couldn't go, which sucked. But yeah, they tried to restrict that. I don't know if it helped at all, but
I know for that LA one, because I would have loved to go to that. That was before we knew that they were going to go full tour. I couldn't find resale tickets for the life of me, even to see if someone would. But I saw that they were very strict about it, like at the venue. So I see a lot of artists that'll probably be moving towards things like that to prevent scalpers. But like you said, like Ticketmaster is also the scalpers.
And I don't know, I probably should have looked deeper into this before recording, but I saw a lot of people were complaining about the most recent Bad Omens tour with similar bot reseller problems. Because obviously, I don't know who needs to hear this, but the artist has nothing to do with the bots that are buying these tickets. It is not the artist that's doing this, and you need to stop tweeting at them like it's their fault, because it's not. I saw one dude just wilding out in the responses. But I think they had some kind of trouble with that this time around, and I feel like E would have a better perspective on that, as she's a bigger fan of them. But it's not something that's going away.
Yeah, my husband and his friend looked at the Bad Omens tickets, and I mean, like, they were like Taylor Swift, where they sold out in like a minute.
Yeah, and E was
Less than a
saying
minute.
that they were being resold for crazy prices, and it's just, it just sucks. It just sucks because even that money.
Yeah, not to say I'm not discrediting Bad Omens at all. I'm not saying they're not a huge band. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, it's weird to see that happen with, like, a Taylor Swift caliber artist, and then an artist in, like, the emo, metal, alternative, whatever you want to call it, scene have that same problem. It's just like, it's
Yeah.
getting closer.
Like, we're all in this together, get screwed over. Like, they don't care who you are.
That's not the first time we've sung that song on this podcast.
But it should make everybody feel a little better. Like, they're not just screwed over you, they're screwed over everyone.
Yeah, and it's...
But then, like, so there's the price gouging, there's the ticketing tiers that are messed up, and then I know Bad Bunny on his last tour also had a lot of sold tickets through Ticketmaster that were not valid tickets. People
How
were
does that
showing
even
up
happen?
to the show. I don't know. People were showing up to the show with their tickets, and those tickets were people were already sitting there, and they were already sold. It was like being sold twice. So that I don't know.
And
if that was
Ticketmaster is just like,
yeah.
I don't know what happened with my capital.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah. So that was a whole other, like, there's just so many different issues. It's not just like one. It's like, how are you not improving? It's kind of like when I think of, like, streaming services.
They're not improving because they don't have any reason to improve because they don't have any competition.
Yeah. Well, so, like anybody that's listening that uses the HBO Max app will understand how frustrating that app is. But you're not going to not use it because HBO only has those shows on there. But it is the worst streaming app. And I'm like, why don't you just look at Netflix and do what they're doing? Like, so it's like,
Well,
you could improve it, but you don't have a reason to. You just don't have a reason to. Like, no incentive whatsoever. And it's the same. It's the same. I mean, I've been repeating myself this whole episode, but it's like, if there's no incentive, then nobody cares.
Yeah, I wish we had a more satisfying wrap up or solution to everything we just talked about, but now I'm just riled up and angry at rich people.
I think it's like a problem, you know, live music, but like across a lot of things, just in general life, and just like I keep thinking about how a lot of people right now are resorting back to going to hotels instead of Airbnbs because the fees and everything else on Airbnb, it's not worth it. Like it used to be. That was the cheaper option, and that was, like, great to go. And now people are like, well, why would I do that? Why would I pay $500 extra in fees to then have to clean up after myself and wash
my
the
own
sheets
laundry?
and do everything? Yeah, like all this stuff. And they're resorting back
I'm
to
going
hotels.
to the...
So
I'm gonna go stay at the $80 Holiday Inn. I don't care.
So I think... Maybe, I mean, I don't know what that would look like if that is just box offices. Like we said, Ticketmaster can still screw you over that way, or if there's other options that we're going to be resorting back to that get away from that in the same way with live music. But, I mean,
we'll just have to see what happens with the Taylor Swift thing.
Yeah.
Like the
I think the bottom line is going to be laws. Like... these are all just examples of things that are too big and going unchecked.
Right.
And, you know, getting the government to do anything about anything is...
But
anyway.
As music fans, it's disappointing, and hopefully it changes, just because, you know, I just want fans to be able to go to shows and enjoy that and experience that, and, like, you know...
Back in my day, you could see 20 bands at Warped Tour for $50.
Exactly. I mean, you'd be dehydrated and you know, passed out on the pavement, but you were still
and
there.
Anyway, speaking of Pearl Jam, the next grunge cover that we have coming out this week for the It's All Grunge compilation is Frontside performing Even Flow by Pearl Jam. which
And it's a good one. It's a good one.
If you know what Walter's voice sounds like, you should
I'm
be excited about
for
this
it
cover.
to drop, yeah. Yeah, so by the time this comes out on Monday, it will be out because it drops. We're recording right now on the 17th, and it drops this Friday. So check it out, and then that will be all of them. All the It's All Grunge songs will be out, and you can listen to our little compilation. And there will be a part 2 eventually. And
eventually at some point in the future.
Yeah. It'll be happening, I promise.
Yeah, so... I mean, we've ranted about Ticketmaster. You can let us know in the comments on your thoughts. I think we're all collectively on the same page, just as
yeah. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone defending Ticketmaster unless they're hired to. So
yeah, we don't support billion-dollar companies around here.
When we have a choice to, we don't.
Yes.
What was I going to say? I encourage everyone to go read this article that I read. It's a goddamn rabbit hole, and it goes so much deeper than just artists being angry about not being paid.
Right.
It's called Ticketmaster's Dark History on prospect.org. We'll put the link in the description.
Yeah. And I'm sure a couple years from now, there'll be a documentary on Netflix and Hulu about the takedown Ticketmaster,
There's gotta be.
Hopefully. So,
They do all the documentaries.
Let's hope someday we get that we got to a point where things changed, that we get a documentary about it. That's when you know. But yeah, so let's go into Songs of the Week.
It's okay. I'll go first. So my song of the week is called Get Around This by Safety Suit. I should have, I listened to Safety Suit a lot when I was younger, and I went back to listen to them. Somehow they got in my mind, and I went back and listened to some of their music this past weekend, and I was like, oh, I should have brought them up on my top 3 albums or whatever. But yes, Safety Suit, Get Around This. Definitely check it out.
Nice. Mine is Break Stuff by Limp Bizkit, because that's just kind of been the vibe the past 2 weeks, okay? You know
Girl,
what?
you have no idea.
That has just been the vibes I'm bringing to the day each day for 2 weeks straight. So we're going to throw that one out there. It gets out a little of the angst. Driving to work, I'm like, before I yell at anybody there, I gotta reel it in. So,
and she's not yelling at us, just FYI.
No,
she's not yelling at us.
Other work, not revival. It would never be revival work. All you, Amanda. Bring it home.
Sorry, I was just bringing it home. My song of the week is, I'm gonna shout out my friends Picturesque. They have an album coming out. It'll be out by the time this is, I believe it also comes out on Friday. It's called If You Know, You Know. But the song is called Hopeless. That's my song of the week. It's very good. I've toured with them twice when I was out with Alisana, and they're some of my favorite people in the scene. They're very nice. They're very talented and all around very cool, and you should go listen to them if you don't. So
nice.
Yes. Awesome. Well, this will be the last episode for April. Then we're going into May, and we'll have hopefully some more special guests coming up. We know everybody enjoyed Sean and Nick and breaking down the brackets. And if you haven't gone back on some of those albums, do that. Listen to them. And we'll talk to you next time. Some revival guests, maybe some other ones. You'll just have to tune in and find out. All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the You, Me, and the Scene podcast. New episodes are released every other Monday.